Hi, my name is Vahan Davudyan. I'm a physics experimentalist for 30 years, and I have had so many lectures starting year 2000 in DeVry College and then CU Boulder and Regis University. But today's topic is so important, and I have prepared so many unique experiment. You're going to love this. It's called artificial intelligence. And in fact, this is so important in our life because nowadays the technology based on artificial intelligence, and then I can tell you exactly step by step why it's so important in our life. First of all, I'd like to thank so many people that emailed me. They love these theories, and then you guys keep doing that because it's a great encouragement for me, and I love that. And then I responded them, and that is great respect for someone who's trying to, like me, to promote the science, because this is my main objective, to promote the science and then educate some people as much as I can. And today, this is the important topic. And first of all, let me introduce myself. Like I said, it's called Artificial Intelligence and Robotics by Vahan Davudyan, physics experimentalist. And this is my email, vahandavudyan@aol.com. This artificial intelligence, I have to give you a little bit history that how it starts and everything else. It is so important in our life, and imagine the human's capability and humans, the way our body, our strength, and so we will never be able to perform the way the robots do. So nowadays it's so important in our life. You think about the technologies, like the computer technology, automobile industries, and like food industries. Overall, everywhere there are robots. They are performing on our behalf, and in fact, they're doing much better than we do. And this is so important that we know what the artificial intelligence is. So imagine from now on we will. Yeah, it looks like from now on the science fiction came science fact. Well, in fact, it's not exactly science fact, but imagine what we just visualized maybe 60, 70 years ago, now it's becoming true. So nowadays, they can do everything. This robot can build walls, perform heart surgery. That is incredible. They can do everything that is beyond our comprehension, how good, how precisely they can do. And then we will have safer cars and so many other things. Well, of course, I have to go step by step. Like I said, the science fiction become science fact. And in fact, so many writers, they started writing from 1920s. At that time, even the computers were not that much, but that was the imagination for science writers, that robotics one day will take over, and that's exactly what happened. And now they're so important in our life. So I have so many experiments now. I show you exactly what I mean by the artificial intelligence. Let me take this off so you can put one by one so you can see. Before I start this, I have to mention one of the greatest minds in history, the English scientist, Alan Turing. He was a great scientist, but unfortunately he committed suicide when he was so young. But he was one of the players in this artificial intelligence. And imagine, in 1950s, before the artificial intelligence even existed, he was a good, he came up with this Alan Turing test. I will show you exactly how important this test is. Well, of course, it's imaginary, but imagine, that changed our life. So Alan Turing was a mathematician, and he started so fast, in 1950s, and he was comparing with the humans, but of course, there is no doubt, the humans, our superiority is the language, and the computers, we have to program everything and then they can converse with us. But, the language is so important. And then when it comes to calculation, we are no match for the robots or the computers, because our memory is limited, but their memory is not limited. And then I will explain later. I will go back, and then imagine every time, every year we have more memories, more memories. The reason why we are capable of adding more transistors, adding more ICs, but for the humans, ours is limited. Well, of course, we have some people can memorize more, some people can memorize less. But this was so amazing what Mr. Alan Turing did on this experiment I'm going to show you. That, changed everything in our life. And in fact, in 1996, there was an IBM computer called Bluetooth, and then what happened, that computer beat the best player in the world, Garry Kasparov. He was champion, Russian champion, and that shook the world. No one expected such a thing like that. But I have to give you a history exactly what happened with Mr. Garry Kasparov and that IBM who beat them in a chess game. This is the photo of Mr. Garry Kasparov, in Russian champion. Here it is. So, well, of course, there's a story behind this, but sometimes the books don't mention that. So what happened in 1996, Garry Kasparov beat the computer. This was not mentioned, I don't know why. Beat 4-2, and then the scientists gathered together, they realized, we can fix it. So what happened, they did modification on that computer. And that modification was beyond my imagination. They could have like 200 million different board positions every second. So how could you expect a human to have such a good memory? It's just beyond my imagination. It's just almost impossible. So what happened in 1996? He won, and in 1997, Bluetooth won. Well, of course, the story goes like this. He had won the computer, Garry Kasparov 4, and 2 tied. And in 1997, everything was changed. So Garry Kasparov was beaten 4-2. The reason why that computer was enhanced, was added so much memory so it could beat Mr. Kasparov. But I had to analyze things like that. Why? For the humans, we have like in our memory, maybe, I'm comparing because that was my field when I was young, random access memory and read-only memory. Ours is both at the same place in our brain. But for the computer, no. Random access memory, when you turn off your computer, it's gone. But read-only memory is permanent. So in other words, they call it the old hard drive. It's always there. So it depends on how much memory, gigabyte or whatever the size of your computer is, it's all already there. So Mr. Garry Kasparov was beaten with this computer, and that made a history. But I don't know what happened after this 1997. All the scientists, especially the computer scientists, they woke up. They realized something is happening in the world which is beyond their imagination, is beyond their comprehension also. Why a computer can beat a human, one with that much experience? Garry Kasparov, he beat everyone in the world. And I remember the oldest was Mr. Bobby Fischer, and he was genius, American, chess player, and Boris Spassky, and he was also genius. He beat everyone in the world. And then he came to United States, and then Bobby Fischer beat him big time. He was no match for Bobby Fischer. Because the reason why, if you go to his life, he was an amazing person. He was a weird person. Whole his life was chess. Because Bobby Fischer did not do anything but chess. So that's why he could beat Mr. Boris Spassky. I'm sorry. So this is the test I was talking about a few minutes ago. This is extremely important test. It's called Alan Turing test. Let me post this up. You can see it. I mean, imagine a genius mind could come up with such an experiment. So what it is, he did this in 1950s, and imagine at that time there was no artificial intelligence did the way it is now. Well, of course we did have robots, but this experiment, if you think about that, it is so important. I mean, it has a meaning that, why someone is so intelligent and come up with this. So Mr. Alan Turing did this, and the way he set this up, so there were one interrogator, or the man who was asking the questions, and there was another one here. This was called the stage 1 and the stage 2, or second stage, first stage, and second stage. So there was a computer here on one side, and there was a human being on the other side. So in other words, he set up like this. So interrogator, and you know what? They could not see each other. Everything was isolated. And the computer and this human, they had no idea who was asking the question. Because the reason why, you see those walls there behind them, they had no idea. So the computer responded. So the question sent to the computer responded. See right here. You can see it's sent to him. And then the human responded. The question sent to the human respondent. So it goes to this interrogator. So human interrogator uses the keyboard to type in questions. This was genius idea. So he does not want his voice disguised or anything. So he did the keyboard. The reason why, he didn't want to know that, who is asking the question. Is that a human being asking the question, or it might be a computer asking the question. So anyway, second stage was so important. So computer responded and then he answered questions, the computer answered. And then answer goes back to interrogator. You can see the arrow goes to him. And here, human responded, and then answer goes to the interrogator. But something amazing happened here. And then interrogator had no idea which one is coming from the computer and which one is coming from the human being. He had no idea. And then he concluded that, in this case, that you cannot recognize or you cannot distinguish if the answer is coming from the computer or the answer is coming from the human. So the computer beat human. So in other words, we cannot distinguish. That was great idea. And this Alan Turing test is so important. And I haven't seen it on YouTube or any place like that, because this was an old book I found it. But you see how good it was set up, and it has a meaning. It means that the computer is almost as intelligent as human, but it depends on how you program it. I missed something. I have to rephrase that. I used to work in IBM and UNIVAC, combined 10 years. And in fact, UNIVAC, where I used to work, that was the biggest corporation in the world for the computers and things like that. And if you remember, I said that, Mr. Gary Kasparov first beat the IBM computer, and then a year later, IBM computer beat him. Why? Because it was modified. I remember when we were in computer technology field, always we are receiving a packages for the modification. You know how important modification is. It can happen in a car industry, can happen in anything, food industry, anything. So always they come up with something and then they try to, correct that problem, rectify that problem. That's exactly what happened in computer. So those engineers, like I said, they modified everything. So the IBM computer beat the human, which was one of the greatest, player at that time. I have to explain why did I choose this important subject. The reason why, when I was so young and graduated, we were fixing computers and then, hard drive. And guess what? We were getting 1/3 of those people who were programming. And one time I remember I got so depressed. I said, why did I choose that one? And then I said, no one. Programming is so different. You are not cut out for that. Because you are cut out in a technology always. I can fix almost everything. You have seen my experiment. They're all unique. And you can't find them in any books or any physics places like that. Never. So why did I choose this? Because we had to analyze everything. When you have a problem in a computer, you don't start from the PC boards, you don't start from the microchips, you start from the power supplies. So in other words, our first experiment was, we have to confine the problem. We have to start step by step, like doctors. If you don't have your blood test, they have no idea what your symptoms are. So first thing they do, they get your blood test and then according to your blood test, and then they analyze things, and then they come up the symptoms, and then they come up with the cure. So anyway, this is why we choose this hardware to fix computers. And I have some analysis, and this is so important. When I was so young in 1960s, I was good in essay writing. So, or teacher said, Juan, can you write something about the automation? And I don't know why at that time I was reading a lot of science books and things like that. And then guess what? Most of the class, I would say 90% of the class, they said automation is not good. But my perspective was so wide, I disagreed. I said, no, sir, the automation is good. I'm talking about 1960s. I was 12 years old. 1960s, I said automation is good. And imagine, the production goes up, the accuracy is 100%, and so many other things that, the work time is less. And imagine, everything is different. The reason why, like I said, human beings are so different. We're getting tired, sometimes we argue, sometimes, we are getting emotional, but the robots, they never get emotional. As long as they have that power supply, is feeding the electricity, and as long as their, components are functioning properly, so they can work. And these are my analysis. So the efficiency goes up, safety goes up, and everything else. And imagine if they put me in a factory, like, car factory, or, any factory, assembly factory, I won't be able to pick up things, heavy things. It's just beyond my capability, because we're human. We can pick up maximum like 20, 40, 50, 60 kilograms, but we won't be able to pick up 100, 200 kilograms. It's impossible. So these are my analysis. That's how important it is to have the robots in our life. And imagine, supercomputers are capable of performing billions calculations per second. In 1969, that was a great moment in my life. I was reading science book and things like that. And then our science teacher said, I have to explain you something. If this was supposed to be done with the humans, it would take years and years. And I did not understand, I did not grasp that idea 100%, because I was almost 20 years old. And then I realized that teacher was absolutely right. He was fantastic. He was getting his PhD in physics. And then he said, you know what, automation is good. And everything is good with the computers, because we humans, it doesn't matter how smart we are, mathematician, PhD in physics, PhD in chemistry, or doctor, it doesn't matter. Our, humans, our knowledge is limited. Of course, we can enhance it step by step. It goes in years and years, but for the computer, it's not like that. So, like I said, humans' mental or physical ability is always, less, and then that is the reason why we can't do. And I remember when I was in this field, and was so important, and you guys know, of course, I don't know if now they teach this. Those days, they used to call read-only memory, and then after that was random access memory. I remember we used to fix IBM computers, and I don't know, those old people will remember, we had a huge module. There was 4 slots empty. So I had to ask our, instructor, sir, what is the purpose of this empty slot? He said, okay, that's a good question, and you're going to get A+. I said, why? Because nobody asked that question. I said, the reason why we have these slots, because just in case if we want to enhance the memory, we put another board. So 4 slots were empty. But nowadays, I don't see that anymore. So imagine I grew up with the technology, and then in few minutes later, I will explain how amazing it is. I grew up with the transistor. When I grew up, it was not that much IC, integrated circuit. I grew up from the scratch, and not even transistor, from the tubes, and all the way to large scale integration. And imagine this Intel computer, and well, of course, I'll show you in a minute. In 1970, that IC was, I think, 24. IC could have only 2,300 transistors. I will show you in a minute that how big the transistors were at that time. So Intel in 1970, 2,300 transistors, and in year 2020, the same size IC had 2 billion transistors. That is shocking. That is so amazing that, how they could do this. Well, of course, there's important subject in science, in technology, miniaturization. And I will explain in a minute what do I mean by that. I have seen huge, radios when I was so young, 10 years old, 12 years old, and maybe the young generation don't even know this. And then it was functioning with the tubes. It was not transistor, of course, was invented at that time, but it was mostly tubes. And then gradually we had the transistor. The American scientist John Bardeen and those 3, they invented the transistor, which changed the world. The transistor was one of the best inventions could happen in the history of mankind. Let me put this up. And by the way, let me get this up a little bit this way. By the way, the transistor, if you go in a science book, you realize where does it come from. The name calls transfer of resistance, and it started with a huge. The first transistor was, I think, like 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. Now the same thing is nanometer, which is just blowing my mind. It's just size of atom, and imagine. These are the transistors I used to work with, and imagine each one was 10 millimeters. 10 millimeters versus nanometers. Isn't that just amazing? So we had like collector, base, and emitter, and I remember those days, maybe my age will remember, there was a red dot here for the collector, and then I used to make my own radios when I was 12, 15 years old. But I had no idea about the electromagnetism, about the, diode, triode, and then things like that. I had no idea. This is an amazing picture from 1931. And imagine, these are called, probably the young generation don't even know this or they have never seen this. These are called tubes. And those days, the transistor was invented, but unfortunately, it was not mass production. And then Japan was so good, they had a small, transistor radios. And I remember I was like 17, 18 years old. They said this has 6 transistors. It was so good in reception. And imagine, this same thing, this must be at least 1 meter by 1 meter, at least, see how big it is. And then we got 1, 2, 3, there's 2 more behind, 4, 5 transistors or 5, tubes. They were generating a lot of heat. But those days, we had no choice. In fact, it was functioning exactly like a, transistor, but these are called solid state, but these are not, and imagine how big that was. When I was maybe 7, 8 years old, I remember we had no TV. So my dad one time came in and said, we have a surprise for you guys, and then he bought a radio. And this is going to blow your mind. When I turned on the radio, it would start after 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And then I asked my dad, he said, I have no idea, I'm not an electric guy. You have to ask your brother. He was good, he was a technician, You have to turn this on 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, it would function. The reason why, this is the way it was made. It should heat up and then start. See, so that's why I told you a few minutes ago, I started from scratch, step by step, and then come to here. And this is the one few minutes ago I, explained. Let me see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this has 16, connections. And imagine there's a rule for that. You have to start. Well, of course, this one, it's not showing. There was a dot here. So most transistors you have to start counterclockwise. That is a rule of thumb. And imagine this Intel was 4040, the name was 4040 in 1971, and it has 2300 transistors. The same modern one had 2 billion. Can you believe how much we advanced? So what we did, we just miniaturized everything. Not only we space time, we space, we just save space, and then we spend less money, and imagine how smaller it gets. And this is the new one. This is from 2020. This is called large scale integration. And imagine how many, branches they have, and each one has billions of transistors. But how would they do that? For the humans, it's just out of question. Sometimes they say, they will replace humans. It's impossible. We don't want them to replace us because, we are in command. We can order what to do. We can program the, processing machines how to do it. It's just impossible. Some people are not optimistic about the, robots, but I am always optimistic. But there must be a regulation. We have to make sure we are not going overboard. We have to make sure that they will take over. Maybe one day we're not going to be alive in another 100 years, but I'm sure they're not going to take over now as long as we're alive. So imagine these things, how it's processed. If you go YouTube and watch one of these videos, which they're so comprehensive, I love them. Each one, if you open your telephone and imagine, there are 90 billion transistors in your, and then it's got 62 microchips. I mean, how could you believe your phone is almost like 2 inches by maybe 4 inches, but your CPU is almost like 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. That is unbelievable how good it is. That's just incredible. So has 90 billion, and each one has 20 billions, transistor inside. And imagine, for the humans, we are not capable of doing this with this precision. Of course, you might be able to go to a factory, car factory, and then assemble things. But this is so different. When we're talking about memory, these are the, state-of-art equipment, and these are in Silicon Valley, in California, and places like that. Each of these machines, probably they are like 20, 50, $100 million, and the way they do the precision is 100%. I mean, how could you have so many transistors compact together at a small place like that? And then I have to show you one thing. I always like, give students especially, examples that, how much we advance in technology. This board, let me bring it over, you can see. And you can see these are the transistors, and then we got one IC over here. And imagine, that is the only IC you can see right there. And imagine how many, diodes and transistors. And by the way, those days, the transistors was mostly like this, plastic shape. But these are the old types. And imagine these are almost like 1 centimeter. And can you believe the same thing now is nanometer, which is the size of an atom? And then, something is so bad over here, which you can see that. See the connections here? That is at least 3 centimeters. See these wires right there? Right there? At least that one is like 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters, 30 millimeters. See how big they are? Nowadays, they're so compact, it's less than a human hair. And the way they are is amazing. Everything is done by computer. I have to mention something. Those take 3 months to build. And then they cut those wafers, silicon, and then they sell them millions of dollars. But imagine 3 months, that's a long time. It goes maybe 1,000 or 2,000, 4,000 processes, one by one, layer by layer, and finally they do the job. And this is the new one. Let me show you. You can't even see, well, of course, I'm hoping you guys can see it. It just has a reflection. You can see how small those dots are. Look at that IC. That probably has maybe 20, 30 billion. This IC over here, probably that many transistors. And you can see here, you can't even see the, you see? This is the layer on top of it, and then these are the connections. It's unbelievable how small they are. And this is the board, which is like 5 or 6 years old, and this was from the CPU from a computer, and this was 10 gigabyte, I think. That was a good computer, but of course, unfortunately, it was a short circuit, and I had to remove this. And imagine how, we came a long way. So this is all because of robots. But you know what? We are smart enough to program them. There's another example I have to tell you. This is a good toy. Well, of course, not toy. It's so intellectual. This is called Rubik Cube. So you can go this way, that way. You may not believe. This guy, I think, is from Romania. I'm not sure. But his name was Rubik. And then he was good in math. He came up with this, that you can have 6 quintillion. We're talking about 18 zeros. And you know what? MIT has always been my best. I was role models from MIT professors, because that's the good university. That is the only university in the world that they got the most Nobel Prizes. The reason why, they have smart people, they allocate a lot of money, they invest a lot of money, and they get all the Nobel Prizes. So MIT had a test with the Rubik Cube. I have seen some Japanese, I think, young boys like 10, 12, 15 years old, they can do 10 seconds, 15 seconds. And guess what? Rubik was done with the MIT robot in 3 point, I think it was 3 point, let me double check. I think it was, 0.38, less than a second, they finished and then everything was aligned. So this is the way they function. See how good they are. Well, of course, there is something I have to mention that, we should not get so happy sometimes that, we have robots and things like that. Cognitive is one of the, very difficult subject, about the psychology and some other things. That, humans, we have this ability, we can think, we can reason, we can have logics. Even, if something come up, we analyze things. But the computers or the robots cannot think or cannot logic. Even, humans, we can feel, if it's hot or something is cold. But guess what? The robots cannot feel it. The reason why they can feel it is there's just the pressure, so it's converted to the electrical signal, and then that electricity tells them this is hot or this is cold. So this is the way they function. So as long as we have this, ability, we can talk, and the computers won't talk. Unfortunately, they can't, because, this is not the way they are made. But, they are, I will show you in a minute, some computers can talk because they work on it years and years and years. They can even have a conversation with human the way Mr. Turing did. You have no idea behind the wall, is that a computer talking to you or is a robot talking to you? So that's how advanced they are. I'm going to give you some applications. Well, of course, everyone knows. By the way, United States, Germany, China, United States, Germany, China, and England, they are the front runners of this technology. And especially United States, and I don't know how smart they are, they're spending a lot of money. When I was so young, I was in Los Angeles, I saw Stanford so many times. That is one of the greatest universities in the world. And in fact, God knows how many scientists they have in every aspect. And guess what? They allocated $6.5 billion in Stanford for this artificial intelligence. And I don't know how much China also did. They invested billions of euros for their project, but I'm not sure exactly what the figure is. But they just don't want to compete with United States, but overall they want to get ahead in artificial intelligence. So anyway, this is another thing I want to show you. See, the Silicon Valley, YouTube, and then the Facebook, not the Facebook, YouTube, Facebook, and everything else in Silicon Valley. And that is their headquarters over there. And imagine, this is the way we can, do the, application for this. And then this is called self-driving cars, autonomous. And that's not bad, of course, but unfortunately, they come up with a big problem with the self-driving cars because some humans are unpredictable. I have seen some, science videos. The humans can stop for the crazy people. They're jaywalking or sometimes, they run the street, or even the kids run the street. But unfortunately, robots cannot distinguish that. Even they might stop, but they're not as good as humans. So that's why the autonomous cars, it takes another maybe 10 years, they become 100%. So like I said, YouTube Amazon, Siri, and then ultimately, autonomous vehicles, and then search engine, Google. And sometimes, when I was so young, I was searching for physics, experiment, things like that. You put laws of, as soon as you type M, says motion. I mean, just instantaneous. The humans can't do that, but the computer is programmed. Sometimes, I misspell, and immediately it underlines red. So I know. I mean, it does. I don't even have to pick up the dictionary. I know that, that word I have misspelled, so I have to retype it again. And this is my imagination. When we were in computer field, I remember some young people would come up with some design, like I said, to improve something. But imagine, you could not tell whether or not that design is going to work or not. And then we had to put it in a computer and then, simulate and make sure that, that design will enhance the memory, that design will enhance so many things. In a computer, we can put that in a computer tells you immediately this design is faulty, it's not going to work. But the humans, with all this experience we have, with all the knowledge, PhDs, doctors, we can design. But imagine, we have to install that in a computer and then make sure that computer works. But the computer shows on your screen that, that design you did, it's not functional, it's not working. So that's why it's so important, have the computers. This is a car manufacturing company, and if you remember a few minutes ago I said, just in case, let me get my ruler, I can show you. I said just in case, if you replace this robot with a human being, it's just impossible. We cannot work. First of all, our ability, we cannot pick up heavy stuff, and our precision is not as good. So imagine, we have no choice. We have to program these things. Not only we can get cheaper car, we can save in time, we can save in everything. So in other words, we are at the bottom that, comes back to us. So in other words, we're paying less to buy a car. The reason why everything is automation. And this was the, robot I was telling you. His name was Asimo, I think. It's where, Honda car made this. And this can, change the battery, knows exactly when to change the battery. And then when they move, they know there's a bump or something, they can feel it, they change direction. This is another robot. You see how amazing it is. This is called, I think, the Earth project in Tokyo, Japan. And this can also evolve. But, I'm not certain, I'm not sure how it can evolve. If you don't have more information, how they could, evolve. So that's the reason why we need the robots, because they make our life so easy. This is just a few, things. Let me show you. See, eye surgery. When I was so young, I was thinking, what? If something goes wrong with your eyes, you won't be able to do anything. Because nowadays, if you remember, I think it was a month ago, I had laser, and then I showed this same picture that how you can go and then fix everything in retina, and then you can even do surgery. And imagine, this is so sharp, this laser beam is so sharp, but of course it is done by the computers. And sometimes the computers are so good, the robots are so good. I even heard they can have them in a heart surgery. There are places, sometimes, you won't be able to do exactly, I mean, the precision job, it doesn't matter, you're the best surgeon, but you won't be able to do it exactly like a robot, because the robot is not getting emotional. They're always doing exactly what they're programmed to do. So imagine they can do surgery like this, they can cut steel like this, and imagine everything is computerized. You don't have to do anything. And this is showing the, robot is performing heart surgery. Well, in fact, it's a vacuum cleaner, and then we have it. This is so good. And then you just turn it on, it goes, and then it changing direction is so good. And sometimes, I even put a little bit, feather, which was so little, but they changed direction. And this is another one, but I don't know what this robot is doing. And imagine it's just doing something. But imagine how many circuits they are, how much joints they have over here. How do they work? God knows how important their job is. So good. Well, of course, I have to mention one great writer. His name was Jules Verne. And I was like 10, 12 years old. I remember I used to read those books, and then I love science and things like that. And what Jules Verne did, like 200 years ago, everything is coming true. Like I said a few minutes ago, science fiction now became science fact. Jules Verne wrote so many books. And one of them was so amazing, that, human can go in, different planets. And guess what? And then his vision was, he was not scientist, but he was a good writer. He predicted that, how the gravity works, and then when that comes to Earth, atmosphere, and then come down in the ocean, and that is exactly what happened. He predicted that, when we have a space probes, and then they come back in the ocean, when they land in the ocean, it was exactly where the Apollo 11 landed 3 miles away. I mean, how could he had this vision, this insight, I don't know, but he predicted everything, so everything is coming true. And in my life, I have seen like this 40, 45, 50 years that, how much we progress. And then, like I showed you a few minutes ago, we had tubes that would take forever to turn on. The transistor was so good at that time. Now, they don't even use transistor by itself. It is integrated in a smaller thing, and it's like a nanometer. And imagine a transistor can be nanometer, 6 nanometer by 2 nanometers. It's the size of an atom. So imagine how much we progress in things. Like, let me see if I have, one more thing is so important. A month ago I was watching in France, Olympic is my favorite. I watched that when I was like 6, 7 years old. Even I watched in black and white. And something amazing happened. In fact, when I got married, I had to go to Frankfurt. And then I don't know what happened. I met a scientist. And then I had to travel to Munich. It's a beautiful city. In 1966, they made history. And I remember the old days, probably young generation don't even remember this. They had a stopwatch like this, and then they would stand where the players are there, swimmers, and then they would go like this, a stopwatch, and then stop, on and off, on and off. When I started, my motion things, and then I had no choice. I didn't have a laser beam. I had to buy a stopwatch. And then I went Google, I realized, I'm not making any mistake. The humans are not fast. The most important thing is you can activate and deactivate the stopwatch in 1/10 of a second. But when I saw in Munich, it was so different. And some American, like Mark Spitz, they got like 6 or 7, I think 7 gold medals. And now this time, Mr. Michael Phelps, they got more than 20 gold medals. Isn't this beyond your imagination? And then I saw one poor American, swimmer, he lost by 1/200 of a second, which is like, 10 milliseconds. Can you believe? I mean, that much we have this technology before even you touch that, to think, you know, when you're done 100 meters or 200 meters. So imagine how much this technology is working us. And those days I remember they were doing, a stopwatch. The accuracy was maybe 50%. Really, it was 60%. It doesn't matter how fast you do it. Sometimes, at 1/10 of a second, the other one will get gold and then you got silver or bronze. But nowadays, you see, that's how much we advance in technology. Let me see if I have more things. And I think that's all I covered. And I'm hoping that you guys love this. And one more thing I have to mention, I have always, emphasized this. Any university or college, I'd be honored if they invite me. I'd be happy to join them, and I'd be happy to travel. I pay for all the expenses. I can even take some, a small experiment, and then I can show them why. The reason why my main objective is to promote the science and make sure that everybody learns everything. And well, of course, maybe I'm not as good as your professor because they had so much experience, and then they studied maybe physics for 30 years, I studied maybe for 20, 25 years. But overall, I can cover almost everything as much as I can. And I'm hoping you guys like these videos, and then if you like it, you can subscribe. And then if you have any concerns or any questions, you can email me. I'll be happy to answer it. Even if I don't know the question, I'm a good researcher. I can find the answer and tell you guys. Thanks a lot, and thank you for watching.